What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a model airplane review. I'm your host, Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Hobbymaster 1/72 scale A-10C Thunderbolt 2 painted in the Indiana Air National Guard Centennial Scheme from 2021. This model is item number HA1332, released in January of 2022. In this video, I'll do an in-depth review of the model and its accessories, and at the end I will give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. At the end, I'd also like to provide a bit of a personal story as to why I chose to purchase this model. The box is a large cardboard box measuring 26 centimeters for the length, 9.5 centimeters for the width, and it's 27.5 centimeters tall. I'll show you around the box now. This is the front. This is the bottom. Right side. Top. Left side. And the back side. This box features a flap that allows you to see the model inside of the box. It's held together by a Velcro strap right here. Normally in here we would have the model and the plastic protective packaging, but I removed that because I wanted to take the model out. And underneath this flap we have some information about the A-10 Thunderbolt 2. Take a moment to read this if you'd like to. Included in the box is the model, almost fully assembled, fully painted, and pretty much ready to display. A metal and plastic display stand, 2 options for landing gear configuration, extended and retracted, and an obscene amount of pylon and ordnance configurations. Due to the sheer amount of these configurations that are available with this model, I may not be able to go over every single one in detail. However, I will do my best to do that later in the video, so stay tuned for that. Here's what the model looks like on its included display stand. The included display stand is a standard issue Hobbymaster 72nd scale air power display stand. What sets this stand apart is up here, the adapter to the aircraft itself. This plastic part up here is what makes it exclusive to the A-10. And it fits into 2 of the pylon holes on the underside of the wings. So it's an interesting way of using that extra space, which is kind of cool. With regards to the quality of the stand itself, even though it's made from a mixture of plastic and metal, it's very sturdy, and there's absolutely no risk of the model falling off. You can see it's a little bit wiggly, but even if I wiggle it a bit hard, it's not going to come off. So I do recommend the stand, and there really isn't a reason to be wary of it or to get a different stand, but that's ultimately up to you. Before I start my review, I'm going to give you a quick 360 of the model itself on its stand, so apologies for the wobbling. This model is made out of a mixture of plastic and die-cast metal. Nonetheless, it's still pretty heavy for its size. It's 23 centimeters long for the fuselage, 24 centimeters for the wingspan, and 6.4 centimeters from the ground to the top of the vertical stabilizers when the model is sitting on the ground with its gear extended. This is accurate to 1/72 scale. We'll start with the fuselage and specifically the nose. Up here there's a lot going on in terms of detail. Let's talk about molded detail first. Molded detail in the form of the overall shape and profile of the fuselage is pretty good. Up here we've got a lot of recessed panel line detail, none of which is filled in with paint, which looks excellent. Printed detail is definitely not lacking up here either, especially with this snake pattern here on the nose. Not only does it look impressive, it's very well done on the part of Hobbymaster and accurate to the real thing, so hats off to them for that. We'll move down the fuselage and you can see there's more detail with markings. Here we can see the color shift from the darker black to the gray. Looks pretty good. I do see that something appears to have gotten caught in the paint there. So it's a small imperfection. Nothing too major. I didn't see it at first, so that's why I only spot it now. Here are those massive engines. Overall, the fuselage profile is pretty nice. Lots of line details or recessed line details, as I mentioned earlier, and a decent amount of printed detail to go all around too. It's pretty good so far. I'll show you the right side of the fuselage. There's really not much else that's different on the right side, and everything that I've said about the left side of the fuselage can also be applied to the right side. Overall, we're off to a really great start with this model. Let's move up to the top of the fuselage, starting with the canopy in the cockpit section. So the canopy on this model hinges, which looks pretty nice, and I just noticed that there appears to be a piece of missing black paint. There we go, that's what I meant to say. So yeah, small imperfections so far, nothing too major. But if you look inside of the cockpit there, it is pretty nicely detailed. There is some printed instrument panels as well as a physical joystick, which well, not joystick, but control stick, which is pretty nice. And I'll move to the side here. You can see some of the side instruments there, and it's also present on the other side. Okay, I don't think you're gonna be able to see that through the canopy, but it's there. And the seat itself is also pretty nicely detailed. Interestingly enough, Hobbymaster decided not to include a pilot figure with this model. Why, I don't know, but they usually do, so that was kind of strange. While we're up here at the nose, I'll just give you a top view of the rest of the nose, including that giant GAU-8 Avenger, which looks really small, but it's actually a huge gun. Very nicely detailed so far. The windscreen looks excellent. The one gripe I do have with the windscreen, you guys probably saw it better earlier, but the joint between the windscreen part here and the fuselage, it is kind of defined with a few glue stains here and there. Nothing too criminal, but something I did notice. You can still see traces of glue stains here on the right side too. Back behind the cockpit, we have some antennae and aerial features. These look pretty good. They appear to be either part of the mold or they're just glued in really well. No, I think they are part of the mold, but they look pretty good. I have no complaints about that. Now, usually I wouldn't do this, but since the engines are mounted to the fuselage, let's start talking about the engines. The engines on this model look pretty nice. Now, there is something I'd like to point out with regards to the markings on the engines. Here is the side of the right engine, and here we see a 100 next or behind a banner with the Indiana Air National Guard. Now, as implied by the name of this livery was paint job was painted to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the Indiana Air National Guard. That was in 2021. It is now 2024. In 2021, this aircraft had this marking here. Nowadays, it doesn't. So it's accurate to the time, but to the present day, it's not really accurate. So that's not much of a complaint. That's just something I wanted to point out. Now, something I do want to point out that is more of a complaint is the fan blades. Now, the fans on this model are really nicely detailed. If you look in there, the blades are clearly defined. Everything looks really good. Except for on the real aircraft, the fan blades are not painted this silver color. They are painted the dark black color that matches the rest of the aircraft. I don't think I've ever seen an A-10 with this silver fan blade color either, so that is an inaccuracy on this model. The exhaust nozzles on the engines are quite good. They're painted a brownish metallic color, which looks fantastic, and you can see a little bit of detail on the inside of the exhaust there. So I guess Hobbymaster does get some redemption there on the engines. Overall, they're still decent. Now we're at the bottom side of the fuselage. Down here, pretty much all of the bottom side of the aircraft is painted the lighter gray color. Still, down here, it is definitely not lacking in detail. You can see a lot of panel line details to go around. Once again, that snake pattern continues down here. This little red bit is the tongue of the snake, which is kind of cool. It aligns right next to the gun, so that's quite interesting. So I'll pan the camera down the fuselage. Moving down here, you can see some of the gaps for where the pylons go for the ordnance. As I mentioned earlier, I have those pylons empty right now, but I will demonstrate what they look like later. Down here, we've got some more antennas. These are actually attached to the aircraft through the inside of the fuselage, so they're not directly attached through a hole or a surface up in here. They're pretty firmly attached. If I were to try and wiggle one, it's not doable. So even though they're supposed to be pretty fragile, they do have some durability when compared to other antennas from other manufacturers. So that is pretty nice to see. Moving on to the wings. The wings in this model are very nice. The one small nitpick I can complain about with the wings is that here you can see that this is kind of a cradle mold, and you can definitely see where the mold separates from the fuselage part, but it's not terrible either. If anything, it matches the thickness of some of the recessed panel line details, so I can kind of forgive it a little bit. Printed detail on the wing is very extensive. The painted detail in the form of the different gray colors is actually really good. The color fade between the darker black and the lighter gray color, or just the gray color, is actually replicated. So there is a color fade instead of just a color shift from one to another, which is accurate to the real aircraft. The right wing is slightly different to the left wing in that it has this antenna right here, and this antenna, it's pretty fragile. It's a plastic part. It is angled. It is supposed to be bent downwards like that, so the shape is accurate. But if you do have this model or any A-10 model, just take extra caution when handling it, because this part would be very easy to break. I'm seeing a small imperfection here on this little bit that extends out from the wing. There's a small paint chip here Not really sure why that is, but it happened. Moving to the rear of the aircraft again, here is the left vertical stabilizer. The vertical stabilizers on this model are some of the parts that are made out of plastic, and I can distinctly feel that this is definitely plastic. Nonetheless, though, the quality is very much the same as the rest of the die-cast parts on this model, so I really won't hold that against Hobbymaster. But the printing up here looks pretty good, detail looks really good as well, and it looks all accurate as well. Now, the one on the right side is slightly different, which is accurate. Here it's got the tail code IN and then a bunch of other things on here that I don't know yet. And then here we have a checkered flag pattern, and in red text it says Fort Wayne there again. So pretty good on the vertical stabilizers here as well. Here we are at the bottom of the aircraft again. This time I'm going to talk about the underside of the wings. The undersides of the wings, not too much detail down here, not that there is much to put, but there is plenty of recessed panel line details here as well. It's a recurring theme all across the model. I'll just say that to get it out of the way. But on the undersides of the wings, we have 4 pylon stations to put pylons and ordnance. And then right next to the wing root, we got 1 pylon station right here. This applies to both wings. Now, earlier we passed through the center of the fuselage, and I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this is also a pylon hardpoint. So yeah, you can put a lot of ordnance or a lot of pylons on this thing. We're going to start moving on to the configuration options for this model, starting with the landing gear. So here is what the landing gear look like when they're in the extended configuration. All attachments on this model, including the pylons and the landing gears and everything else that I'm about to mention, they're all friction-based attachments. There are no magnets. Now, friction-based attachments, they do tend to wear off over time. However, the attachments on this one are extremely tight, so it'll definitely take some time to wear them down if you're messing with the model enough. But I'll take off this main gear right here, and you can see it's very nicely detailed. The wheels are made out of rubber, but they do not roll. So that is something to take into account. It's not bad, but something I do want to point out. But yes, the gears are pretty nicely detailed. Take out this one as well. And the nose gear is quite nice as well. Here it is. Now with the nose gear, there is also a piece for the open nose gear cover. This fits in through a friction-based attachment to the nose gear bay. Now I'm going to do my best to try and show you what the retracted landing gear configuration covers look like. Unlike the extended position, the retracted covers, they're only one piece for each gear bay. Let's see, where does this one go? This one goes right here, I believe. I seriously hope I'm doing this right. So, yeah. You do have to put a decent amount of pressure to get the cover to fit into the bay, but once you do, it fits in there very nicely. And I should mention that the wheels on the main gear retracted configuration option, those are also made out of rubber, so you are not losing out on any detail with either landing gear configuration. So there's that one, and where did the nose, here it is. Just gotta fit it in there nice and easy, and boom. Now, the fit isn't exactly 100% snug, but it's decent. The best fit is with the nose gear. The main gear ones could use a little bit of work. You can definitely see some of the white paint poking out from underneath there. Now for pylons and weapon configuration options. This model includes 2 primary configurations: empty pylons and fully loaded. The empty pylons are exactly what they sound like. It's just a bunch of empty plastic pylons, which you can see on the left column here. On the right column, we see the fully loaded pylons with weapons and all sorts of things that I really do not know about because I'm not well versed in US Air Force ordnance and all that fun stuff. All of these parts are made from plastic, and they fit to the pylon bays on the wings or the fuselage through a very tight friction-based attachment. Now, that's a good thing because, well, that's a good thing and a bad thing. A good thing because you don't have any risk of your ordnance falling out if you're moving the model or if you hit it by accident. That won't happen. However, the bad part is that when you're trying to fit the pylon into the model, since the gap is very tight, it's very easy to apply too much force and cause the parts to snap, break, or cause your finger to slip and break something. Since these are plastic parts, they are inherently weak, especially when being handled with strong force. So exercise a lot of caution and patience when you're inserting or removing any of the pylon configurations into the aircraft because it's very easy to mess up. Overall, the quality of the pylons is pretty great. There are panel line details. The weapons on the fully loaded pylon options are very nice as well. They're painted, detailed panel lines. There's no really printed detail on any of these, but there really isn't too much to put either, so I won't complain about it. Overall, they're good quality, they're just hard to work with. Here's a view of the front of the aircraft. Wing flex here looks pretty good. The positioning of the vertical stabilizers and the engines looks pretty good. Gear balance looks pretty symmetrical. I do notice that the left landing gear is bent out just a little bit, but then again, this is a friction-based attachment, so it might just be off to the side a bit and I can fix it really quickly. Nonetheless, everything up here looks pretty good. No complaints. Last thing I'd like to cover in my review before I give you my opinion and personal recommendation is the paint. Now, the paint on this model, I'm not a huge fan of. The reason is because the colors are not accurate. The black here, or one can make the argument that it's very light gray or very dark gray. This looks fine. The black paint here looks fine. The color it appears to be correct. The lighter gray here, this is not the correct color at all. The color is not blue enough, if that makes sense. If you compare this color with images of the real aircraft, this color is too green. It needs to be less green, more gray, more blue almost. So Hobbymaster definitely could use some improvement on the color on this model specifically. So in my opinion, this model is pretty decent. However, it does have a few notable Achilles heels. The number one thing being that lighter gray color I pointed out earlier. It really messes with me personally, and it's not accurate to the real aircraft. So Hobbymaster definitely dropped the ball with the gray color there. There's also a few small imperfections like the glue application on the windscreen and paint chips here and there, but overall nothing too major. So quality on the model was pretty good, had a few imperfections, wasn't perfect of course, not like any model's perfect, but I think it could have been slightly improved, but it's not terrible either. So I definitely recommend this model. Just know that the paint isn't 100% accurate and there are small imperfections here and there. And once again, you get a ton of ordnance configuration options. So make sure you know how to decide which one you want, and just be careful when putting on those pylons because they can be really tough and really stubborn. So just be patient and everything will work. For this last bit of the video, I'm going to tell the story as to why I purchased this model. If you don't want to listen to it, then thank you so much for watching. You can go ahead and click off now. The video is pretty much over in terms of the review, and I hope to see you guys return to the channel soon. Take care. The story as to why I purchased this model begins in April of 2024. At that time, I was at school, working hard, knocking out homework, and losing hours of sleep, like many other college students were doing at the same time. Now, I study at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, and every year the Purdue University Airport hosts an event called Purdue Aviation Day, and at this event there are a ton of aircraft displays, both static and aerial. Now, I had a bunch of fun at the static displays, getting up close to some of my favorite planes and taking pictures and whatnot, but where I had the real fun was during the air show part of the event. Part of the air show of the Purdue Aviation Day of 2024 was the A-10 Thunderbolt 2 demonstration team, and I got to see this exact A-10 performing an aerial sequence above the Purdue University Airport. Now, I've never really cared much for the A-10, but 2024 is the last year that the A-10 demo team is going to be performing, so I was really lucky that they came so close to me and that I was able to witness the demo team in action. And, well, it was really something special. I really enjoyed the show. I loved seeing the A-10 in action. This one in particular, it looked just so amazing, and I really enjoyed the experience. So, as a result, I bought some A-10 merch at the show. This being one of them. This here is a keychain. It's a remove before flight keychain. You see these everywhere. And I strapped this one to my bag because, well, it looks pretty cool. And, well, it's a very nice way to remember a day in which I had a lot of fun. Now, the second thing I bought at the show is, well, a bit more ominous, if you will. This beer can-sized bullet is a 30mm bullet that would be fired out of the A-10's main cannon, the GAU-8 Avenger. Now, I should say that the GAU-8 Avenger is Well, actually, no, the A-10 is attached to the cannon rather than the cannon is attached to the plane, because the cannon is that freaking big. It's a huge thing. And this bullet definitely confirms that. This bullet, I mean, it's huge. It's bigger than the model itself. If I hold it up to the model, assuming I don't drop it, it's huge. And I'm pretty sure it's inert. The reason I say pretty sure is if I give it a shake here, and if you guys take a close listen, you can hear what appears, or what sounds to be, powder. Now, I assume that's sand, but there's always that little chance that I got a little bit lucky, and this one is a bit more energetic, if you will. So I gotta take good care of this thing, and I will. It's really something to be careful with, but it's very cool that I was able to get an authentic piece of A-10 hardware, and now I have it with the model, so that's pretty cool. Now, I got the model in May of 2024. I was at the Chicago Airline Collectibles Show convention selling, and I was walking around, and I noticed that one of the vendors had a few of these A-10s on sale. And I thought of getting this model before, but I saw it was out of stock everywhere, and I figured it wasn't even worth the effort. But when I saw this at retail price at the show, I just had to investigate. So I decided to talk to the vendor. I come to find out that the vendor is a Purdue grad himself. So that was really nice to see. And well, one thing led to another, and the rest is history. Now I have the model, and I have a beautiful replica of an aircraft that I have a very fond memory of. So that's why I have this model. Well, that's the end of the story. And if you decided to listen to the story, thanks for listening, but this is the end of the video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more model airplane content. If you have any feedback regarding the video, or questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to drop those down below in the comments. I'm always happy to reply to you guys. And that's all I have for today. Take care of yourselves. Happy building. Happy collecting. See you next time.